Whether you've got a small garden or a large yard, native plants can make it better. We have the expert in the field with us today to educate us on native plants. And Margie, you have written the perfect book on native plants for Tennessee. So we are privileged to have you talk to us today about it. Let's start with the definition. What are native plants?
Native plants have evolved in this space. So they have all these adaptations to our geology, our soil, our climate, to the wildlife that's here, and to the other plants, to themselves. And so as a result of these adaptations through evolution, they are able to form a functioning community, kind of an ecological system, if you will. And that confers all kinds of benefits to the gardener when he or she can tap into that community functioning. One of the best things to do is to go to your local nursery. They often sell native plants in addition to non-natives that are favorites in our gardens. So start with your local nurseryman and see what native plants they're carrying. You can go to local parks, for example, to see what plants are growing naturally in your area as well, and then begin to research those. There are many books that talk about native plants from a regional perspective, as well as narrowing it down to, say, the state level, for example. And in addition to that, there are some wonderful gardening groups that are committed to native plant gardening. There are 3 such chapters of Wild Ones, and Wild Ones is a national organization, but there are 3 chapters of it here in Tennessee. So those are excellent resources to learn more, not only about the native plants in your area, but also how to garden with them, any kinds of questions you might have about using them in the garden.
I'm a huge proponent of learning and then doing. Let's talk about, you get a native plant. A lot of people think, well, it's native, it's gonna be great, it's not gonna need any care, it's not gonna need anything, I can just dig a hole and stick it in there. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. There's not a plant in the world, I don't think, that you can just dig a hole and stick it in there and walk away and it's gonna be fine. You're gonna have to care for it some. And it's the same thing with natives. The same process, the same research that goes into, that any gardener would use when they're bringing plants into their yard. What kind of conditions does it favor? What kind of conditions does my yard have? And do those 2 match? And if they don't, how can I tweak it maybe to bring this one in and make things a little better for it? So those same thought processes and research are going to have to go into native plants as well. They are not universal in terms of just being able to plop them in the ground and they'll be fine. But at the same time, because of that evolutionary advantage that they have, you may be able to utilize them in areas where it gets drier and conserve resources by not having to water as often. Because they are native, because they have developed that community type approach to working together as a unit, they will attract wildlife, so you get pollination services, and you also get pest control services with them.
Nice.
The more wildlife that come in, right, they're going to eat and be eaten.
Right.
So you get kind of Mother Nature coming in and beginning to use your garden for her benefits as well. So that's always great. And what that means is that you can either significantly reduce or even eliminate the need for chemical interventions like pesticides, right, for example. There are a small number of non-native plants that have a tendency to become invasive in Tennessee. And so those are the ones you want to watch out for. But the majority of the plants that we garden with are not. They're not going to be a problem, and the 2 work together beautifully. They're all plants, and they're all native somewhere. It's just a matter of where are they native. Plants are not any different from the fact that there's something that you can bring into the garden other than where did they come from, and is there a way that can be advantageous to you, or could that also be a problem for you in the instance of things that might prove to be invasive. And there's a great website to learn about the invasive species. The Tennessee Invasive Plant Council has a website, tnipc.org. And they have a full list of plants that have been identified as invasive species in the state that you can avoid. Many of them are plants you wouldn't want to use anyway.
Right.
And so in addition to being able to identify ones that you would want to perhaps avoid, or if you have them, to remove from your garden, also there are resources on native species, especially good ones as substitutes for some of these invasive plants that people might like to garden with.
And talk to me about soil, because that's such an important part of that community. Do you have to do things to your soil in particular that will help native plants?
Well, of course, native plants evolved with the geology and the soil that's here. They help to create the soils that are here. And so there's a natural affinity there. But depending upon your yard, depending upon, you know, when it was built and what the contractors did to the landscape there when they were building your house, you may need to make some amendments to the soil. But the best thing to do is to build a healthy soil. It's not a matter of feeding your plants by sprinkling 10-10-10 fertilizer everywhere. That's actually the way to damage your soil and then make it so that your plants rely on that all the time. You're having to feed them. If you build a healthy soil where you've got bacteria and fungi and all the little, you know, microinvertebrates that are in the soil working to break down the nutrients and make them available for the plants, a healthy soil will feed your plants and give you healthy plants. And so healthy plants are able to resist diseases and pests better. And so a good gardener, rather than worrying about feeding plants, needs to concentrate on building a healthy soil, utilizing leaves and clippings and weeds through composting and things of that nature are the best things to do.
It's the foundation of your garden.
It is, absolutely.
And you know, we think about native plants and I immediately think about flowers, but trees, shrubs are also native plants. Do you have some favorites?
I do have some favorites, and before I get into listing actual species, I would like to recommend that with a native garden, if you want to take full advantage of that evolutionary community effect, the more native plants you can bring in, the better. And so I sometimes like to compare it to your house and land as such. You know, you've got your land, you've got the house, foundation, walls, roof, you've got the major rooms, you've got big furniture in those rooms. All of that should be your native plants. And so some of the non-native species would be things where you want to bring in extra color, extra texture, extra form, things like that, something different and unusual. It's more of the accent pieces.
Right.
So the more native plants you can bring in, and I like to think of it in terms of diversity, and three types of diversity. Diversity of species, diversity of forms, so trees, shrubs, vines, just what you were mentioning, and then diversity in terms of the seasonality, so that you have something throughout the seasons as well, which is what all gardeners look for in their garden, to have full seasons represented there. So, but that's particularly important with the native plants because of that community attraction. And you get that going. It's the old adage, build it and they will come, right? So you get the full advantage of what Mother Nature has to offer and can take those benefits that come along with that kind of community. So if you're looking at individuals in particular, you can't go wrong with any of our oaks. I mean, first of all, they live for anywhere from decades to centuries, and so they are so wildlife friendly. So any of our oaks are great to consider. One of my favorites is the hophorn beam, American hophorn beam, Ostrea virginiana. It's a smaller tree. It's actually an understory tree, but it grows well in the open as well.
Really?
And so it stays short, more in the 20 to 30, 35-foot range, growing in the open. It has a beautiful bark and these wonderful hop-like clusters of seeds that the cardinals absolutely adore. It's very strong-wooded, so the storms, increasing storms that we're having here, whether it's ice storms or wind storms, it's going to hold up better to those than some other trees that might break and split. So those would be good trees to consider.
And you know, we're sitting in an area garden that's got a lot of native plants, and you can just hear the wildlife beaming.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just seems to be a happier place because you've made it friendly for the wildlife to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a wonderful book that many gardeners, particularly those of native plants, love to cite. Doug Tallamy, Dr. Doug Tallamy, is an entomologist and wildlife biologist in Delaware, I believe. And he wrote a book, Bringing Nature Home, and he talks about the use of native plants and how it will bring in insects. And of course, gardeners usually go, oh, insects, I don't want things eating my plants. But at the same time, you bring in the birds, because baby birds need those insects, the protein, in order to grow and develop and get their feathers. So each little trophic level of feeding will bring in another trophic level of feeding, and everything stays in balance as a result of that. You strike this balance in nature that's really, really wonderful, and native plants are the foundation for that.
I love your analogy of that, and I particularly love that this is something that the average gardener can start small and build up. And just incorporate a few things,
Right.
or go big.
Go big, either way. And if you start small, you often start adding more and more. By the time it's
Right.
over with, you've gone big.
That's true. We don't stay small, do we?
No, it's not in our DNA.
Margie, you are a treasure trove
Oh my
of
gosh, thank you.
information, and I feel like that you have helped us enormously with this, and I really appreciate your book as well. So thank you for your passion for native flowers, and thank you, and plants, and thank you particularly that you've zoned in on Tennessee. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's been my privilege. Thank you.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.